Hello, Mr. Tech 302 here, and today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you how to set up a virtual machine on Apache on Ubuntu 16.04. I'll be using 16.04.2. It's the same operating system, it's just an upgraded version. So, first what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually log in to the server. Now, if you have OpenSSH and LAMP already installed, you can go ahead and jump ahead. But for those that might not have OpenSSH or LAMP installed, being that this might be their first time trying to set this up, I'm going to go ahead and walk through that real quick as well. So what we're going to want to do is on our actual server, which I'm using a VM on my computer, I'm using VirtualBox. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in to this server, and I am going to get our IP address so that a way we can use what is called PuTTY. Now, if you don't have PuTTY installed, I will be putting a link in the description for that, and what you can do is go ahead and go and download that, get it installed, and you can log into your server from your Windows machine. So, now that I have logged in, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to get the IP address. You can get the IP address of the server by running if config. And that is how we get our IP address. So now, what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to show you how to get into the task selection part of the server, so that a way if you don't have OpenSSH or you don't have LAMP installed, we can go ahead and install that now. But what we're going to need to do first is we're going to need to type in sudo-s and type in your password, and we are now root of the server. This will let you do everything on the server, so just be careful with the commands that you enter. But the command that we're going to be entering in is harmless to the server. So we're going to type in task cell, which is TASKSEL. So now, as you can see, you should have this screen come up that shows you all of the packages or software that you can install to the machine. So as you can see right here, I have LAMP installed already, and if we go all the way down towards the bottom, you can see that I have OpenSSH installed. So we are pretty much done with that part. If you don't have these installed, go ahead and pause the video now and get these installed. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do that. I am going to go ahead and exit out of our root, and I'm going to type exit again to log out of the server. So now, if you have PuTTY installed, if you don't, go ahead, like I said before, and go ahead and get that installed. I'm going to bring us over to PuTTY, so that a way we can get used to using PuTTY. And this is why I'm not doing this on the virtual machine, is to get people used to using PuTTY. So if you're doing it remotely, you don't have to worry about going to the machine every time you want to do that, or specifically the fact that you can't do that if you have a dedicated machine or a VPS. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up PuTTY, which I'm already logged in. Now, we're going to need to go to our Apache web folder area, which is going to be in VAR or VAR. So we're going to use that by doing and typing cd space / VAR / www. So we've changed our directory over to the web directories. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to type ls to see what else is in here, which you should see purple letters pop up depending on how it's set up. It might not be purple. So you should see something pop up and it says HTML. That is the root folder for the Apache web server, which should look like that. So going back over to PuTTY, we are going to want to make a directory, but first we are going to need to be root. We can leave the VAR www there and just type sudo, helps if I spell that right, sudo-s. Type in your password, and as you can see, we're now root in the web directory, or you can become root before you go to it. You can become root after you go to it. It'll hold you in the folder that you're in whenever you go to root. So now what we're going to do is we're going to need to make a directory, which is going to be mkdir space, and we're going to call this, you can call it whatever you want to if you're following this to actually set something up for live production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter mrtech.tut. I've created a host on my computer so that a way I can actually use that as a domain name specifically for this tutorial purpose. We enter that in, and now if I type in ls, we'll see that our domain or website directory has been created. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go into that directory using cd. You don't have to type /, so you just do cd space and then what you named the folder. And as you can see, now we're in there. There's nothing in there. So we need to make two directories. We need to make a directory, so mkdir, called public_HTML. This is where your index files or the files of the website you're installing will go into. We also need to make another directory and call it mkdir, not call it mkdir, but type make directory mkdir logs. And there we have our logs file, which your error logs and your access log will be printed into. So for that point, we are pretty much done with making the folders to get ready to make the virtual host. So I'm going to type cd to go back to the root directory. Then we are going to need to cd into, so cd /etc/Apache 2. And what do we have in there? And as you can see, we have a bunch of different folders. The one that we need to copy is in sites available, which if we go into cd into sites available, whoops, typed that wrong. You can see we have a couple of configuration files already in there. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to enter the command cp, which is for copy, 000-default.conf space, and name it whatever you are calling your website or whatever you're using for the domain name. So for instance, mine is going to be mrtech.tut. And whenever we ls into that again, you can see that it copied the default over and changed the name of it. So now what we're going to do is we are going to use a command that is called nano. And nano is basically a document editor built into the Ubuntu command line. We type nano mrtech, well, I'm typing mrtech.tut, which will pull up our virtual host. So now there's a couple of lines that we're going to need to add and a couple of lines that we're going to need to modify. So we go over here to server name. Server name, we don't want as www.yourdomain.tld. We want this one to be yourdomain.tld. So for instance, mine is going to have to be mrtech.tut. We are going to enter down, hit tab after you've edited that line, and we're going to need to type something called server alias. This is where we can put the www.yourdomain.tld. The TLD is the .com.net, and if you already knew that, props to that one. Server admin. If you have an email address that you're going to be using for people to contact you, specifically for if there's something wrong with the server and it shows the 404 page or whatever, it shows this email address. So for instance, I'm just going to call this one admin at mrtech.tut. Now, for our document root, we are going to need to change this to var www and whatever you called that folder. So for instance, mine was mrtech.tut/public_html. This is what tells the server that it needs to point the incoming traffic to this directory, and this is where it needs to pull the website from. The next one that we need to modify is this one right here. Error log. So we're going to need to remove the $Apache log directory, and we're going to change that with /var/www/ whatever you named that folder /logs, and this is where it's going to print all of those. Now, quick little tip on this to get through this one faster so you don't have to type this all again. You can highlight from the end of logs over to VAR. Do not press Control-C. Do not right-click. Right-clicking will paste this. When you highlight it, it will automatically copy this. So then you can leave your green cursor right there and then just right-click. And it'll automatically paste that in. Now, if you're going to be using something that is called an htaccess for fancy URLs, we need to add something for that in, which I'm going to go ahead and do. If you're not going to be using anything like an htaccess, then you can go ahead and skip this portion. But the htaccess is what makes it where you can have like your domain /guests, your domain /this, instead of it saying like your domain /guests.html. The server will use mod rewrite and will automatically pull that, and it will keep just /guests. htaccess rewrites this. So then what we can do is we put in a caret, which is that sign. We put in directory space quotes /var /www whatever you named your file /public_html. We close that, enter down, and tab over, allow, override, all. This will allow htaccess to rewrite your files. We then enter down, we type require all granted, enter down, and then we do the caret / directory. This is going to be everything that we need to do to this unless we have an error. If we have an error, I will debug it in the video. I won't cut it out. So if you have the same problem, you can see how I fix it. Then we hit Control X, Y, and then enter. That saves that. Now, we need to enable that, and it's not just, and we don't use CP, we don't CP this over into sites enabled, we actually enter a command, which is going to be A2 ENSITE, so A2 ensite Apache 2 enable site, space, what you named the configuration file. which, for instance, I do see an error that I did. I did not name it with a configuration ending. So I need to cp Mr. tech.tut to Mr. tech.tut.conf. It has to be a configuration file. The way that I did it with that, which I forgot to put the conf on there, would have made the site not even work. Now we can enter the command that I was going to do earlier with the A2ENSITE space whatever you named that file. So mine being mrtech.tut.conf. You hit enter. It's going to tell us that to activate the new configuration, we're going to need to reload Apache. We can go ahead and do that by typing the command that it gives us. That reloads Apache. Now, if we go in to the web directory again, so we type cd, I don't know why I did it that way, but cd/var/www/mrtech.tut, whatever you called your file, /public_html. As you can see, there's nothing in there. Now, what we can do is we can type in nano and then index.html, which will open us up a new document. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to type in a little bit of HTML code, which you can either just write text in here and then save it, but I'm going to write this in. I'm actually going to do this, which is a heading. And now I'm going to save it. Now, if we go to our web page, and if I refresh it, you see this stays the same. But if I go up here, you see this right there. This was like this because there was no configuration to tell it what to do, so it just loaded the IP address. But now if I refresh this, we get a different page because the server now knows what to do when it receives a request for mrtech.tut. And luckily there were no errors, but that's something that happens occasionally whenever you do things. If you've done it as many times, once you do it so many different times, you'll get used to doing it, and you can just do it that way. I used to have to look at tutorials, but I've set up so many web servers, installed VMs, virtual machines, and kept testing myself and doing it, and you eventually get to know how to do it without even having to look at anything. So, with an HT access, which I actually think I'm going to go ahead and I will do that in another video. So that is pretty much how you set up a virtual host with Apache. If you have any questions, please comment down below and I will do my best to answer them. I have another video that has to do with XAMPP, which is a web server on Windows. I have not been messing with XAMPP since I learned how to use Apache. I have tried to recreate some of the errors that I get with that I got with that version, to try to do on this version. I've tried to replicate it. I cannot replicate it, being why I can't create a tutorial for it and how I don't know why I don't know how to fix that. But I've seen some people commenting on that one and telling others how to fix it, which I am actually glad to see people helping other people out, because not a lot of people do that anymore. But if you need any assistance with setting up this Apache thing, please comment down below. If this video helped you, please like it to let me know that it helped you. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe and tell me in the comments so that way I know. But this has been setting up an Apache Virtual Host on Ubuntu 16.04, and I hope you all have a great day, and this is Mr. Tech 302 signing off.